Hello, folks. Welcome back to World War II TV. I am doing a sudden impromptu Ask Me Anything. My guest for my New Guinea show, failure somehow with the internet, I think, in Australia. There seems to be no one on the sidebar, so I'm here. So I'll give you a couple of minutes in case anyone wants to come and join me here, but I will answer a few questions. Won't be very long, maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, something like that, but it gives me a time to explain a few things about World War II TV. So if you are new to the channel, or even if you are not new to the channel, one of the things I want to get across to people is how much you can help by supporting me. So that's by becoming a YouTube member or becoming a patron. The thing is, I moved from battlefield guiding full-time to doing this nearly full-time, but at the moment I am still having to do battlefield guiding to top up the income, so to speak. What I want to do long-term is do this full-time, commit my entire working week to just doing World War II TV, to putting these shows together, etc., etc. So the more people that can help me by a couple of dollars a month, $5 a month, something like that, pounds, whatever your currency you are in, depending on where you live, it will really help me out. I don't want to sound kind of smug or arrogant, but the output we're giving you of nearly 700 live shows, we're bringing you absolute expert historians from around the world who you can engage with. You can ask them questions. They come on with their new research, etc., etc. So to bring that to you, I don't pay these guests, of course, but I spend an inordinate amount of hours doing it, and in order to make it worthwhile, I advertise their books, etc., etc. So just a little plea there, then I'll answer your questions. If a few of you are watching, who watch regularly, who like what we're doing, it's the old cliche, but for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, just put it on one of your debit cards and your bank accounts. You will hardly notice that £2 or £3, dollars leaving your account. But if a few more people do it, it makes a huge difference to me. The YouTube advertising revenue at the level of I'm at is really pretty low. But I'm not going to change my intentions, because what works on YouTube is the 10-minute videos, a 15-minute, 5-minute guide to this, 10-minute guide to that. That's what really works. Some people get away with very long, detailed content, such as Drakini Fell with his naval channel. But I'm never going to go backwards. I'm never going to go to having people like Michael Nyberg on and having them on for 5 minutes to just do a book promo. I want to talk to people. I want them to explain what their theories are, have a discussion, and then welcome your questions. Not necessarily with Michael Nyberg last night, because I had to do a short show because I had commitments at the pub later on to meet a friend. But with that out of the way, I'm going to answer your questions. So Darren and others, and I do miss the guiding in some ways, but what I don't miss, so for those who don't know, I live in Normandy. I'm in Bayeux. I'm about 20 minutes inland from Omaha Beach, 15 minutes from Gold Beach. I moved here 22 years ago to France, and for the first 18 years of that time, I was a full-time battlefield guide. At one point, I had a company with 6 or 7 guides working for me, but too much work, blah, 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 blah. Then COVID, etc., etc., and I started doing this. But what I hate doing these days, and hate is a very strong word, is I hate doing the slog, the standard slugging along through Santa Maria Glees, Utah Beach, Pointe du Hoc, Omaha Beach, American Cemetery, which is what a lot of people want when they come here. It's brilliant to see that the D-Day sites. My best friends in the world are D-Day guides, and my other half, Mag, is a D-Day Battle of Normandy guide. She loves her work. My best mate Colin loves what I'm a bit bored with it. What I like doing, if I am guiding, is taking people inland, the Falaise Gap, Saint-Lô, the Battle of Haye de Puy, the fighting near Point 103, Tilly-sur-Seulles, the Rauray Ridge, Operation Cobra. I love Operation Cobra. So that's what I do. So I do miss the interaction with people in guiding. I do miss that a little bit, but really this is what I love now. I just love having historians on. I love meeting my heroes. I don't get nervous before meeting some of my guests, but a few of them I did. Craig Simons, I was very nervous speaking to him. Robin Pryor, before I spoke to him the first time, I was pretty nervous. Peter Caddick Adams, thing I was a bit nervous about. So I love this. Good point there about the merchandise. Nige talking about stuff. So there is merchandise links at the bottom of every show. You can buy mugs and shirts and hoodies and stuff with World War II TV on it. And I'm going to try and do a new line at some point and get that done. So please consider buying some stuff there. So let me have a look at your questions. And so will I do a show on the Battle of Bloody Gulch Gully? I'd love to do that. And it was one of the first ideas I had. So for those who don't know, this is June the 13th. This is the defense of Carenton. You see it in episode 3 of Band of Brothers. If I'm going to do it, you know how this channel works. I'd want to do it with an expert, with someone who knows something other people don't know. I could do it. I know what happened at Bloody Gulch. I know where it was. But the person I want to bring on is a friend of mine who wrote a book about F Company 506. Terry Poyser, his name is. And the book is called Fighting Fox Company on the Shoulders of the Band of Brothers or something. It's a really cracking book, maybe 7 or 8 years old now. Terry's a cop out in US. He's taking retirement fairly soon. He's not old, just been very, very hectic as a policeman. He doesn't really like doing this kind of thing, podcast, but I'm seeing Terry, I hope, in June. And I'm going to really try and twist his arm about whether we can either come on live, or maybe I can grab him for a bit and I can take him out to Bloody Gulch and he can do some F Company stories on location, live video him, something like that. I don't know, but I may return to work with the Bloody Gulch at some point in the future. So that's that one done. So questions, Marks and Sparks, neutral countries. Yeah. I've got a massive list of show ideas to keep me busy for at least the next year or two. One of the series I want to do at some point will be a week or so on neutral countries. So if you watch the Tank Destroyer week, probably the big question we will be asking is, what is neutral? Because there's neutral and there's neutral, because Spain, Switzerland, Ireland, all of these countries were neutral. Turkey, and their levels of neutrality were different. So it'd be a really good question to pose about, the motivations for the country becoming neutral. How did it affect the wider war? What about the people within that country who don't want to be neutral, or who think they should be on the side of one or other of the aggressors? So there's good value in that, and I have got some guests lined up to do that at some point. So that will hit World War II TV at some point. I don't know when, but I would love to do a series about neutral stuff. Have I ever ridden on a World War II tank? Ridden on them, driven in them, done film work in them. I've driven a T-34, driven a Sherman. I've been on. I used to own a white Scout car. So the white is the American company. So like the half track, but with the wheeled version. I owned one of them in my dad for a while. I've played in Universal Carriers. I've done what else? I rode on I've done Chieftains. I played around in Scorpions back in the 80s. All sorts of armored vehicles I've played on, jumped on, done stuff. So yes, plenty of stuff on tank. Not for a long time now. And now climbing up on a tank, my knees go now because I'm getting old. So it's a young man's game. Big lumps of metal. It's a young man's game. But yeah, I have. Meeting up with people is quite good. That's one of the things I can do because of World War II TV, because I'm not guiding full time. The thing about guiding is you're out for 9 hours with your customers, and I was doing that 5 days a week, a lot. Now, because I'm doing this, although there is an insane amount of work that goes in behind the scenes of World War II TV, and I'm not doing a poor me. I'm not getting your little violins out. I enjoy doing the work, but the emails, the management, the setting up of the PowerPoints, the discussing with clients, the just scheduling. The Torch to Tunis series is for just trying to fit everybody in. The 14 shows, who's available on what day. Oh, I can't do that day. And then people's situations change, and it's really fun to organize it, and producing the finished product is great. But just arranging the schedule, because I'll do everything on my own. In case you think I'm not, there are podcasts out there, really good podcasts and YouTube channels that have teams. They have editors, they have marketing people, they have the social media management people. I do all of this on my own. Mag helps out with some stuff. And when we were in the COVID era, she was going out filming for the live Battlefield streams, but she's working full time now. And, so she can't be doing stuff for me all the time. So I do all this on my own. So it's a lot of work, but I am available in the days. I am available kind of at short notice. So Leslie Moore, the running girl on Twitter, she was in normally this week, and I managed to see her for the day. In fact, my clients who had booked me for a tour inland for LA's Gap kindly let Leslie come on board on the trip, and she was great. She asked great questions. So I see lots of people. I'm also, although I host my own channel, the other thing about the past when I was full-time Battlefield guiding is my schedule for a year would be almost finished by March. I would know what I was doing every day through May, June, July, or August, September. And what would happen is I might get a call from a TV company saying, we're doing a documentary about the Battle of Saint-Lô or the so-and-so, and they'd say, we're coming over in a certain week. I was already booked. I had tours booked. I never, ever cancelled tours because something cooler came up. I was loyal to the commitment of my customers. If they booked a tour with me 6 months, I'm not going to say, yeah, sorry, I've got a film job now. Sky want me to do this, National Geographic. So I turned down lots of work in the past. Now I'm more available. So I did 2 days of filming last week with a British company, with a historian. You may know his name, James Holland. That was great for a fantastic documentary. It's going to be coming out, I think, maybe later this year, next year. Lots of tank battles, Point 103, Villa Bocage. I'm in that a little bit. I was more there kind of helping and showing people locations and stuff, but that was great. I can do that kind of stuff now because I'm not doing the guiding full time. Ian Carr there, good point. Iceland, there's another neutral country, and it gets even more complicated when you get further away from. For me, it gets more complicated further away from the UK. So you get out towards the Far East, and where I have less knowledge, and so you get Thailand, places like that were kind of occupied. We've done a show on Thailand, by the way. If you haven't seen that, that was a really good one with a fantastic local lady from Thailand who took us through Thailand's war, where it was more of the effects there were economic than they were kind of battle scars, but though people were killed there. So let me do a few more questions. So Vichy, Ice Coffee 13. I live in France, so I'm always speaking to French people. I live with French people. My stepdaughters are French people, so I'm always talking to France and French people about how they are understanding and processing their World War II experience. And for people who are watching in Britain, like Willie, maybe still there, Ian Carr is still there. Our World War II is fairly neat for us because we had the channel that separated us from the actual occupation, apart from the Channel Islands and maybe some other odd places around the world, but not the UK. We didn't have Germans walking down our streets. We were not occupied. Nazi flags were not raised above our town halls. We were bombed. Sure. The UK was bombed, and we had lots of problems and hardships and rationing and stuff. But for the countries like France and Belgium and Norway who were occupied, their governments, their people had to make some decision on how to go through. And an earlier show on World War II TV I would recommend watching is about the French occupation with Dr. Chris Millington. And one of his things, I've said this quite a few times on World War II TV, is the words like resistance and collaboration are very loaded. We assume resistance means blowing up trains and collaboration means, being an informer for the Gestapo. But in between those two extremes are the case I use. My other half, her French family, the villages they were in, Germans came in and took over buildings. They said, we're taking over this half of the farm. You can stay here, but you must feed us. And they have to feed the Germans. And if you don't feed the Germans, you're in trouble. You might be deported. You could feasibly be shot. And so if you provide food for the Germans, are you collaborating? Now, clearly, at a big level, you asked about Vichy. Marshal Pétain we now completely understand the traitor. He sold his country down the line. He was a racist. He wanted to persecute the Jews living in France who were French. They may even not have been practicing their Jewish faith, but he wanted them gone. And we now understand that. And even within the occupied France and Vichy France, there are people within those areas that have different views from the policy around them. So you might be living in Vichy France, but be active in the resistance. You might be in the occupied zone and be loyal to it's very complicated. But my advice would be to anybody is if you want to understand the occupation of a country or how a country dealt with its war, is ask people from that country. So when I understand Denmark's war, speak to people from Denmark. If you've noticed, one of the things I try and do on this channel a lot is bring people on from the areas to talk about it. So when I did a show, very early one, it's very clunky, early days, about Denmark in World War II, I had 3 Danish historians on. That makes sense to me. You want to talk about Thailand, have a Thai lady on to talk about Thailand. If you want to talk about India, the Indian Navy, have an Indian Indian Navy officer to talk about that. That is my policy of trying to understand the complexities by having someone on from the location. So I rambled a bit there about Vichy, but I'd love to do more about neutrality and occupations. And I even mentioned Sweden is very interesting as well. And Switzerland, I think, particularly interesting because Switzerland kind of, it's very complicated. I don't want to say things out of turn, but Switzerland sort of let Nazi trains go through Switzerland, but would also look after escaping POWs. But it's complex. It's yeah. Myth. There will be some more Normandy myth-busting shows in the schedule, and it's just a question of scheduling them. That's repeating what I said a few minutes ago. I am just working so ridiculously hard to get things done. I will do some Normandy myth-busting shows. Probably the time for a lot of the Normandy stuff will be next June, because I'm trying to tie in things while we have the 80th anniversaries coming up. So you've just seen the Torch to Tunis series. We're going to do 2 weeks on Operation Husky, Sicily in July. We'll do a little bit of Normandy content in June, but a lot of the Normandy content I think will come next year in 2024 for the 80th anniversary, although there's lots of 80th anniversaries in 2024 because you have Rome being liberated in June and naval battles out in the Pacific. But, I can't get to everything, although I can come back in other years and go to things. So, yeah, I will be doing some more Normandy myth-busting things at some point. Good question from Willie there. I did a show. I haven't seen it yet. If you've got a link for it somewhere, Willie, let me know. I did a show with Ross Kemp. Ross Kemp, former British soap star, does a show about diving on wrecks and stuff. And it's I was with him for a day. It was a tight schedule, lots of filming. He absolutely knows and understands diving and the sea and wrecks, and his knowledge on World War II is pretty good. He's a generalist. He knows a bit about shipping and naval warfare going back to Drake almost. So he's very knowledgeable. He is really, really nice as well. I have met a few people from TV who aren't very nice. Ross was really, really nice, and that was good. And as also took on board my suggestions for how to word things, how to bring up discussions. Sometimes TV people have a very set idea of what they want to achieve, and you have to kind of almost repeat their script. Which is why some historians are moving away from that kind of talking head work, because you end up, if you're not, unless you're a really huge name where you can dictate things, you end up maybe having to say something that you wouldn't really want you to say, but it's to fit in with the aims of the program. And I'm being very polite about TV and what have you. Oh, morning, James Jeffries is there. Looking forward to Dan Buster's talk next week. What are my plans for D-Day ceremonies in France this year? Well, I've got a tour on June the 3rd and 4th. Bus tour, 101st Airborne Band of other stuff. 5th of June, I'm meeting up with the Best Defense Foundation. That's the foundation my other half Mag works with. That's an American foundation run by Donnie and Catherine Edwards. Donnie was a linebacker for San Diego Chargers and Kansas City Chiefs, and he's been a friend of mine for nearly 2 decades now. And they're bringing over, we think at the moment, it's 49 World War II veterans from the US, and there'll be a 4-bus organization to get these veterans and their helpers and their medics and the sponsors and the film crews round the sites, and they will have served in all theaters, all places. And I'm on with them on their British Day. They're going up to, I think they're doing Pegasus Bridge, and they're going to go to the British Monument of Versailles. So I'll be there doing something. I don't know, being a British liaison or something. That'll be quite cool. So for the rest, June the 6th, I don't know. I keep it pretty loose, and then it'll turn out that someone I know is here, or a group will say, "Oh, we're over here. We're meeting up with this historian or this person in a pub in so and so." I go, "Yeah, I'll see you there." And Darren, yeah, the murky world of espionage in Switzerland. There's lots of mileage in shows about neutral countries, lots of mileage in shows about Switzerland. So the great thing about every idea I get from you, every idea I have myself, every idea I get sent by a publisher or an author, it's all fantastic, but it's just adding to a list that's getting longer and longer and longer. And as I said, I don't have any worries about finding content for you for years to come, and that's without even going back and revisiting subjects. I mean, James Jeffries, who's watching, did some shows with me in the early. He might want to revisit one of those stories with me with some different tech or some different ideas, or just, his assessment may have changed in 2 or 3. So we can go back and redo stuff again. That's the wonder of YouTube, is we can just keep on going back and tackling subjects again and again with different points of view. Ian Carr is asking, where would France have gone if Foch rather than Pétain was still alive? Well, yeah, who knows? Well, there's lots of things in 1940 that could have gone very different ways. Weygand was involved in 40. there's lots of things. Who knows? It could have been very, very different. But good question. Are there any more plans to do shows on the early period of the war? Yes, definitely. Again, some of that might tie up with anniversaries. I might end up doing some of that on maybe the 85th anniversary of things. So I don't know. The Balkans campaign. So let me tell you where I am with planning the Balkans week, because there was going to be a Balkans week. Actually, I think next week was going to be a Yugoslavia / Balkans week. And then I ended up making it an RAF week. Railways week coming up soon. I am and will at some point do probably 2 weeks on Yugoslavia in World War II. I've got probably 30 names of historians around the world. The difficulty is getting them to commit and to fully trust me in what I'm trying to achieve. And by that, I mean the fact that the situation in the former Yugoslavia is still tense. There's still difficulties between the nations and Serbia and Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina and Slovenia and Macedonia on all sorts of levels. And history is good because of the 90s and indeed current history. So when we're talking about the New Guinea campaign, the Solomon Islands, the campaign remains solely 80 years ago in the past. There are very few political repercussions. I suppose you've got maybe still some issues with the Japanese and Australians as governments about prison and war camps and things, but generally it's all in the past. Yugoslavia, the former Yugoslavia, is still a hotbed of all sorts of deeply set rivalries and issues, things like that. So the various historians are kind of say, I will come on your channel, but I want to know who else is on the channel and what will they be talking about, and if they were talking about something, can I have a right to reply to what they're saying about? Because for fear of risk of offending anybody, there are no real clear-cut good guys in the Yugoslavian campaign. There's massacres and on all sides. You know, Tito theoretically is the good guy because they defeat lots of Germans there. They the Tito's partisans keep whatever it is, 15 German divisions in Yugoslavia at the peak, and there's the 7 offensives there. But at the end of the war, they murder people they don't agree with by their thousand. And then there's the Chetniks and everybody else, and then it's very, very complicated. But because I will get there, I want to have people from Serbia, from Slovenia, from Bosnia Herzegovina, from different people, Muslim historians from Bosnia, to tell their point of view. And it may end up whether we talk about the 90s as well. It may end up we talk about modern politics, but it's proving a real headache to just get. Herding cats doesn't even cover it. But if you look on YouTube, there's almost nothing on YouTube in English language about the Yugoslavian campaign with any real, I don't want to call it academic rigor because I'm not an academic, but kind of depth of study. You know, we all know there were partisans fighting the Germans in Yugoslavia. That's kind of what we know. But the level of detail beyond that, what were they fighting for? What were the long-term aims? Connects with France in a sense, in that France has taken 80 years and Italy is taking 80 years to get to understand its role in World War II. And that's without further conflicts between no more civil wars in France, for example. Yugoslavia was torn apart by, and some people say it's not a civil war. So how do you even define the 90s war? What is it? Is it anyway? So we will get there, but it's going to be a complicated process. So that's that about Yugoslavia. Let me look. Is Steve Zaloga coming back on this year? Yeah, I expect so. Steve is insanely busy, and turns out sounds disrespectful. His talent. He produces so many books every year, and I always feel when I contact him, I'm kind of not disturbing him, but because I'm using his incredible knowledge free, and he just comes on with, and you know what he's like. He knocks them out the park. His presentation's always fantastic. And he puts the effort in. Yeah, but he'll be back. I might have him do something in June. Something armored related, probably. That's his special. And anti-tank guns, something like that. I don't know, but he will be back at some point, definitely. Let me see. Yeah, and James is saying he would like to come back and do some of his shows again. So we could do that. We can go in different directions. And James, Dan, and Rob, the 3 guests on the Dan Busters panel next week, we're still discussing which questions we're going to ask ourselves and what answers we're going to give, and do we have to form any firm conclusions? And the answer to all that is no, we don't have to make any firm conclusions. And if you understand what we try and do on this channel, things can be more than one thing at the same time. So just to kind of hint at where we're going to be going with the Dam Busters panel, the Dam Busters can be a stirring raid of intrepid heroism and bravery and ingenuity. It can be that. It can also be possibly a poor use of the resources compared to other things, and it can also be an event that killed lots of civilians that probably didn't deserve to be killed. It can be all those three things at the same time, and that's the complexity that I like to bring to subjects, is that we don't just have to put them in a box. We don't say, oh, it's this. Churchill isn't any one type of person. He's all sorts of things. He's a misogynist, sexist old Victorian duffer, and he's a fantastic guy who led us through the war. You heard it here on First, folks. He's an old duffer, but we're adults. We're intelligent people watching this channel. Most of you are. I'm joking, and we can take on the fact that these things are complicated. That we can have a layered response to this. We can admire Churchill on one hand, and we can despise Churchill on the other hand, or we can say he should have done this, or why didn't you do that? That's fine. We can do that. Okay, so come with me on this journey of being nuanced. Are any of the veterans under 100? Yeah, a couple are, but a couple are. I think one is 106 of the veterans coming over this year, which is just, you know, just incredible. But this now is really gonna be the kind of last time, or next year, the 80th, when there's veterans here in any numbers. David Rose is thanking us for the Torch to Tuna series. His father served in the Royal Engineers Railway Construction Companies. Are you going to still doing are you still doing a show on the railways? Yeah, railways is coming up. It's the week after next, I think. I've just got to get the shows all scheduled. A lot more work for me. Yeah, that's artillery. It's RAF next, then artillery week. Railways is it starts on the 12th of June, and it's gonna be some good shows. We've got one about kind of Holocaust. We've got one about railways in Normandy. We've got railways. What happens is I put the word out, and I think I'm gonna find one or two people who can talk about railways, and in the end, I end up finding like 10. So there'll be probably a first week of railways show, and then a second week later on. And Dr. Philip Blood could probably do the whole week on his own. So yeah, that's what happens these days. I think, maybe I'll find one or two experts that can talk about that, and I find a dozen, which also brings up the other subject of the fact that, as good as they are, why is it always the same figures we see on TV, on talking heads? Why is it all the same people? They're very good at what they do, and some of them are brilliant at what they do, and a lot of them are friends of mine. But there are so many people out there. You've seen it on this channel, you've heard it on other podcasts, who know their stuff, who don't get contacted by the TV people. They don't get a chance. They don't get their books published necessarily. They self-publish, or they have a website. These are the voices that I like bringing to you and bringing to the audience. And thank you very much, Nigel. Congratulations to Tractor Boys. Yes, Ipswich are back up in the Championship next year. Or next season. I can't wait to August. I can't believe there's no football tomorrow. It's I know what to do with myself between May and August. It's like my Saturday afternoons are all set with football. History in your hand. What's on the itinerary for your We Happy Few tour in June? First day of some interesting Easy Company sites that don't normally get talked about. Second day, we're doing some Omaha stuff. Some semi-pro stuff. It's a bus tour. We're still kind of working on the schedule because things are changing, and it's going to be very busy that week, of course. But we're doing Bloody Gulch. Some other things we are doing in detail, doing some of the stuff of what really happened at Bloody Gulch. I can tell you that much, that we're doing a extended walk and drive around the Bloody Gulch battlefield, which will be cool. What else have we got there? Micronations. So there's another level of there's the neutral nations and the micronations. Vatican City. I'm thinking of doing a show about the Vatican City at one point. Monaco, San Marino, all those kind of things. The Italian occupation of France. That's something we forget about. That when France got divided up, the bit over in the east had Italian troops there. That's something we've kind of sort of forgotten. Yeah, that's something we can do. In the future, lots of things we can do in the future. So I'll look at a few more questions, and then I'll think I'll go and do some more stuff, because I've got some work to do. Back to basics. What is a platoon, company, battalion? Yeah, that's a really good point, Robert. And I have thought about that, and then I thought it's opening up a whole complete series, because where do you stop? You know, do you do you do the uniforms? Do you do the structure? Do you do the ranks? This would be a great thing for another YouTube channel to do. You know, someone under the World War II TV umbrella, for example. If there was someone watching this who's a regular viewer, said, "Yeah, I'd like to do that with you, Woody. I'd like to start hosting or producing 10-minute guides to stuff about this, that would be great." I just can't see I have the time to do this. And what I like about you guys watching, guys and gals and everybody in between, is that you are coming with this with a desire for more detail. You do know a lot already. You don't want to be told Hitler was a bad guy and Churchill was the British Prime Minister and a Spitfire is an aircraft. You know that. You want to know what were the changes in doctrine between November 42 and May 1943. That's the things you want, and that's what I like talking about. If I start doing stuff that I'm not as completely into it, someone's just saying, just don't go into it. My country, Yugoslavia, is just complicated. The more that just makes me want to do it more. I completely get where you're coming from with that, but I still believe, even though it's complicated, even though there's lots of anger and resentment, I still think there's a way of doing it if you're nice to people, if you respect people. And we do a set of shows about the Balkans in World War II, even if the views the different historians offer are different and they maybe don't align, or they're not critical of each other, but they are opposite in views. That doesn't matter. You, the viewer, will be able to watch them and say, okay, this guy who talked about that was really interesting. Didn't agree with everything he said. This woman who talked about that was really interesting. That's interesting aspect. And over the course of, let's say I do 10 shows about the Yugoslavian World War II, there'll be a range of views, different opinions, different suggestions of who the good guys and the bad guys are, but it'll be a database for you to draw on to kind of make your own minds up, I suppose. So that's it. So Ashley is asking, what's your favorite tank of World War II? Silly and silly. My favorite tank is the Churchill. I think the Churchill is about the closest. You can say which model of Churchill, which gun. I think the Churchill is a one-trick pony tank, but it does that trick really well. It's an infantry support tank. It's an infantry tank, moves slowly, lots of heavy armor. Gun's okay for what it does. It can take a lot of hits. The crew survivability is very high, and I think when you use it for that job, it's very good at that job. If James was coming on now, James Jeffries, talking about the Spitfire arguably, I know that's an aircraft, not a tank, is quite good at lots of things, but maybe not exceptional at any one thing. Whereas the Lysander was exceptional at a couple of things. The C-47 was very, very good at transport. Hurricane, various models, very, very good ground attack. So I tend to like the things that are very, very good at one thing and are exceptional at it. That the like in sport, the exceptional bowler in cricket, although I don't watch cricket myself, or the exceptional. I'm not a great fan of the all-rounders unless they are so good that they become a legend. Like Pele in football could do everything, but Pele's don't come off along very often. Messi's and Ronaldo's don't come on. So Churchill's my favorite tank. Silly tank. I do like in aesthetically some of those kind of early Italian tanks that kind of look like almost a kid drew them, and they kind of like when I was a kid, I'd kind of make up fantasy vehicles out of Lego. So I like those kind of tanks that look like just a kid designed them, and there's those ones kind of, they're cool. Any more plans for Operation Dragoon? Oh yes, no, that'll be definitely something I cover next year. There will definitely be a Dragoon series in August 2024. Basically with the whole premise, what do we need to bother to do it? You know, and I was talking to someone last week, and I forget who it was now, about the fact that a Dragoon was maybe even a political statement. It was there in partly to kind of prevent too much communist influence in France at the end of the war. That's anyway. Now there's another one. Gary, good morning or good evening, Gary. You should be in bed, Gary. It must be stupid o'clock over there in California. Anyway, I have done some shows on race relations, and I'm going to do some more shows on race relations. I've got a few people lined up. In fact, I've got a whole series of guests up about not just African Americans and things, but also Muslims, and not just the U.S. military. I've got things lined up about India and how this led to partition, and so I've got a whole group of guests ready at some point to do a series of content about race relations. Is probably a not a good encompassing title, but on the interaction of different ethnic forces within the military would be some kind of title. So that, really good question there from Scott. Will I be doing more live in the field videos? Maybe. It was of its time. It was in the early days of World War II TV when I said earlier, I wasn't doing anything. Mag wasn't doing anything. Mag could go out the camera. My other cameraman, Duncan, he's in the US now. He can't be around anymore. So all my guide friends here who could do camera work, they're working all the time. And when when they're not working, they're relaxing. I don't want to start asking them to go out in the evenings and do filming for me. What I can do more of, and I will be doing this at some point, is where I go out and I pre-film video. I did that with Arthur Glaxon and the Ferrier Ridge last year, where I film video a couple of days before, and then I can upload that and we talk over that. That works quite well. I might just try and get one set up at some point. But the other thing is in the early days of World War II TV, it didn't matter just how clunky it was. And I get comments now from people who've discovered the channel recently and watched things like, I don't know, the show with Michael Nyberg last night. They've gone back and watched some of the Battlefield streams, and they find them very, in their words, unprofessional. The live stream, the feed would disappear. The camera, the recording would be all bitmapped and jerky, and they find it all. I mean, we those of us who remember back that far, we loved all that. We loved the unpredictability of when David O'Keefe was down in the Falaise Gap or whatever. But it doesn't necessarily look very professional. So I may go back to it, but I want there to be a bit more of a slickness about it. So is there any chance of shows regarding disarmament of German forces in the immediate aftermath of the war, such as Operation Doomsday in Norway? Again, I've got a series of shows in mind about the 45 to 47 era, which I think is underwritten about. And there's lots going on. We've done a show about the DP camps, things like that. But there's a lot of stuff going on there. There's war crime investigations. There's all the back and forth between Soviets and the Americas. So I mean, the question I would ask myself is when does this still come under the remit of World War II TV? I mean, we did a Spanish Civil War show. I think, I've got one of the shows that I had to postpone that I will try and reschedule again at Wise Gals about the spies in the CIA. That I will find a way to schedule it. But Natalia was ill, and I just haven't been able to get it scheduled. But her book is mostly about these female spies in the CIA post-war, but it starts in the OSS in World War II. So I thought, well, I think that I can do that, because the start of the story is World War II, even though it goes post-war. But if I do something that's solely post-war, is it World War II TV? I'd have to find that reason to connect the dots. But no, definitely. And Norway generally, basically, Norway, at least a week or two on Norway at some point. I'm committing myself to shows like just talking to you now. None of this is, there's no contract between us, you guys. Just because I say I'm going to do something, don't start saying, you said on that show and asked me anything on May the 12th, 2023, that you were going to do a show on Norway, and it's now 2024 and you haven't done it yet. Yeah, I will. That's not your voice. I will get there. But as I say, my list is insanely long, and I'm not getting any younger, and I work really crazy. And anyway, so I will get to all these ideas. Very good point, Mark Loop. Hate all the commemorations about the Dam Busters. As Danny's going to say, other squadrons were involved in World War II. So, but the Dammers raid, it will always be talked about, whether we like it or not. It is indicative, representative of what people think of when they think of World War II. It's and we will try and go into some of these questions next week with the panel, and it'll be fun. And if I piss people off, that's good. Not piss people off. People go, no, I don't like that. That's good. We should have more not controversial for the sake of it, but just shows and discussions that make us think, make us pause and go, I don't think I agree with that, but I like the way you've made me challenge my brain. We had that with the dropping of the bombs on the atomic bombs on Japan. Michael Veitch will be back at some point. Yeah. Don't know where, don't know when. I want to bring him back on to talk about Milne Bay, which was one of his earlier books, but I think one of his best. So we'll have him on at some point. Yeah. Well, let me look at more questions. There will be no chance to join the Walk of the Bloody Gulch on the tour unless you're on the tour that I'm taking there. But I can take private tours to Bloody Gulch. I was there with my group, one of the few tours I do these days. I did a walking tour of Bloody Gulch on whatever day it was, Tuesday, Wednesday or something. So yeah, you can do it. So let me look at a few more questions. Favorite battlefield to walk in Europe? I do like Malta. I'd like to go back there again. Arnhem. I love the Arnhem battlefield because it's nice and close together, and pretty, and good food and stuff as well there. But there's so many battlefields I haven't been to. I'm thinking, even though it's not World War II, I'm thinking of doing Alex Churchill's Lawrence of Arabia tour next year out to Jordan. Just because Lawrence of Arabia is one of my favorite films of all time. So I'm thinking of doing that. And some of you should you should go to bed. Why the hell are you listening to me? I wouldn't stay up to listen to me. I would avoid. That's one of the things. This sounds like an odd comment. I wouldn't watch all my content if I wasn't there. It's too much. Sounds ridiculous, isn't it? I so admire you guys who are there at the beginning of every stream, the Willies of the world, the Scott Grimmers of the world. I'm not saying you have nothing else in your life. I really admire the fact you're there watching it, because I listen to podcasts. There's no channel I watch all their content of, certainly not live. So I think there should be some kind of self-help group for those who are addicted to World War II TV. I admire you immensely, and without you being there to watch me, there'd be no point in me talking to you. But it's crazy how loyal you are, and I really admire it. But I also think some of you need to just go out and do something else sometimes. Go to the pub, get hammered. Don't have to sit and watch me. I'm joking. I really mean you should keep on watching me. One more question we've got going on there. The 17th Airborne show was great. 11th Airborne show was great. Yeah. James Fenelon is a great writer, and I'm glad that he's bringing some of these not lesser known, because they're known if you know about them, but they're lesser known widely units to the forefront. And so yeah, lots more to come up. Do I collect World War II stuff, Patrick? I used to, don't anymore. I used to be a reenactor, living historian. I had a big collection of stuff, and then it all got stripped away kind of mid 2005, 2006. I was feeling I was getting too old and too fat to wear uniforms, and I just was moving. I was living in Normandy by that point, where I literally drive past a Churchill tank every time I go shopping. I will be driving past one in half an hour's time when I go shopping, and I can see rifles, I can see stuff, and I just thought I don't need this stuff anymore. I have a few little bits of relics of stuff I picked up on battlefields. So I have in my little display cabinet. For example, talking about the Battle of Carenton, I was on one day I was on a tour. I was near Bridge Number 2, when a Fallschirmjäger had blown up the bridge before Lieutenant Colonel Robert Cole's unit pushed on. I found two 30 caliber bullets. And I just thought, okay, I'll pick them up. So I put them in like a little polythene bag with a little bit of paper saying where I got them and when, and that just sits in my cabinet. So I've got little things like that. I've got some sand from Iwo Jima someone gave me, and I've got a belt buckle picked up by a soldier in Carenton. So everything I've got now, the very few things I've got now, have an absolute tie and story to a location that is important to me. But just having stuff because it's a 1943 issued so-and-so that I got out of a store somewhere. That used to rock my world, doesn't anymore. And I now, the more going down a slight rabbit hole, which I'm saying you can have a drink, is the more and more I learn about the Holocaust. And I've always known about the Holocaust. You can't grow up and be interested in World War II without being aware of the Holocaust. The more I am finding problematic people who keep collections of SS cuff titles or SS insignia and people who are SS reenactors, that kind of stuff. I'm getting more and more strongly opposed to that. I'm not saying it's completely wrong. I'm just saying I would have to ask myself lots of moral questions that I would not be able to answer honestly, so not that collecting American airborne smocks or British, cap badges is dodgy. I'm talking about SS stuff, but it's still military collecting. And I think there's the one end of it, it's fine. And then it can go along a line. And at one point it becomes a bit weird. And it's the SS stuff. And there are Holocaust collectors, that starts getting a little bit weird. I'm not judging anyone who does it. If you do it and you've got reasons for it, but I find it problematic myself. So yeah, I don't think there's any more questions there, because I will and so Willie says he's right, he hasn't got anything better to do. Well, there you are. I don't know, is that your problem or mine, Willie? I mean, is it I don't know. We'll have to go to counselling together. Willie, I can't wait to meet you one day, and we'll have a pint and we can talk about something non-World War II, perhaps, just for a minute. Just talk about, I don't know, our favorite burger or something. So any more questions, and then I will bring this to them, because I'm going to go and do some stuff. Yeah, showing African American paratroopers would be great. Yeah, the triple nickels, firefighting. That would be great. And there's lots of things to do with regards, again, the race relations and the fact that they weren't going to be allowed to march through the New York parade, and they did in the end or something, and there was problems. James Gavin got involved in that. There's lots of stories there beyond just these guys were black and they were paratroopers. There's lots of how did the US people, the military, react to this, that kind of thing. Korea War TV, and it being asked about, and also World War I TV. I'm definitely beginning to think about whether or not a franchise for World War I TV, it's in some shape or form, but very, very, very early in my thinking. Korea War, I know someone who is very well established on YouTube, or a team who are thinking of doing something Korean War in the next couple of years, which would be really good. I couldn't do it. I don't know enough about the Korean War. I know it was in Korea, and I know it was a war, and that's really where my knowledge ends. I know a bit more than that. Yeah, you could. Thank you very much, Scott. Do a logo for World War I TV. So yeah, but I think I will bring things to end fairly soon. But any more big questions, as that people just agreeing with me about the correct collecting of SS memorabilia and things like that, which yeah, and you know me, for those of you who watch me, I don't want to say anything views are wrong or views in. I'm embracing of everybody having different ideas about things. I'm a left-leaning socialist person, but I have great friends who are right-leaning, and we can meet, we can have dialogue, we can find that common mid-ground. That's the beauty about being calm and having discussions. If you speak to people over, and that's one, just by the way, one of the things I think doesn't necessarily set World War II TV apart, but I think it's something I'm very proud of, is it's a welcoming space. It's you're allowed to come in here. We get surprisingly little horrible feedback on our shows. Some of the channels I know a lot, they get a lot. They have to trawl through all sorts of negativity day after day and get rid of. I get the odd, of course, I get the odd Holocaust denier, and then I remove those comments. But I think people who watch this, there's something about how I bring people onto the channel. There's the friendliness. There's a bit of banter between me and some of the guests I've known for years. I think it feels like a comfortable environment. I feel it. I think when you're coming into World War II TV, and you can agree with me or disagree, I feel like you're coming into my house a bit. We're meeting, you're in my space, and you would take your shoes off if you had dog shit on your shoes before coming in my house. And I feel that before you come on to World War II TV as a viewer, you are being respectful. You are treating it as a space that I have created. I'm welcoming you into this space with my guest, and you're not all confrontational. And why is this guy not doing that? I'm really grateful that you are a good group of people who don't get too hostile, because that would be bad. Yeah, so this is an interesting question. Do you agree that Germany was close to getting the bomb? No, they were nowhere near getting the bomb. The people who say the Germans were close to getting the atomic bomb, they were fucking miles off getting the atomic bomb, for various reasons. Not as ahead with the science. Politically, it was managed by people who didn't know what they're doing. They didn't really have a clear vision in sight, etc., etc., etc. But they were not people. This is your clickbaity. This is your clickbaity YouTube. There are people out there who will do, a video in 10 minutes. It'll be, did you know Hitler would nearly had the atomic bomb or something, and then they'll dismiss it all and go, actually no, they didn't. So yeah, they were nowhere near. The heavy water stuff was interesting in Norway, but no, they were nowhere near. They were nowhere near that. And so have I done a video on the whirlwind? No. I don't. This channel, we don't do a huge amount where we look at a particular aircraft or tank, not because I'm not interested, but because there are other channels that do that. There are other techie channels. The Tank Museum in Bovington is the most followed online museum in the world of all periods of history. The Tank Museum creating content about tanks, world dominating. Why the hell would I know you didn't ask about tanks, you asked about the whirlwind. Why would I try and compete with the Tank Museum? Of course we do shows about tanks, but we're doing them more about how they were used, the battles they fought in, the doctrine, the training, the tactics. So I've done a couple of shows about aircraft. I did one on the Seafire, I did one on the Douglas Avenger. But I'm not really going to go down that route because there are other people doing it better than I can do it. As Scott said, Chieftain does a lot of that stuff. I also don't do, and Brian says, thank you to the Greatest Generation. And I agree with it. I don't do lots of overly warm and fuzzy veteran celebration stuff because there's other people doing that. I don't. I've interviewed a couple of World War II veterans on the channel, but it's not an area I go down particularly. Luckadoo was on 8th Air Force, and if I'm being honest, I have a problem a little bit with the term Greatest Generation and calling the World War II people all heroes, because it's a definitive statement, and definitive statements are by definition usually wrong, in that yes, the great majority of people who donned a khaki uniform and fought with Allied forces were heroes by some definition of the word, but not all of them. Look at early 45. Look at the desertions. Look at the self-inflicted wounds across the army in Northwest Europe. Look at the crime committed. Look at the people trying to get out because they were affected by it. Look at I'm not saying if you're psychologically damaged, you're not a hero, because you are a hero in some ways. But I think they were Greatest Generation. My other problem with the Greatest Generation as a label, by the way, as you've got me on, was it set the bar as being it now cannot be achieved again. I have less of a problem with a great generation than the Greatest Generation. What's the point if you're a grandfather, for example, grandparent, and you're trying to aspire your child to learn and to be tolerant and to take an education and to see a good view? But you tell them, yeah, you won't ever be the best generation. We've had that. The best generation was in the 1940s. You can't beat that now. You can only be second best. That's not the way to go, is it? Surely, as human beings, we can strive for better. They were, in some ways, a great generation, but that we've got to aspire for better. We've got to aspire to be a generation of even better people. So I hope that makes sense, some of that. So, yeah, by definitive terms, I have an issue with sometimes. There's always room for nuance. So, when people say, oh, they were all heroes on D-Day. Yeah, most of them were. Some people ran and hid on both sides. Some people didn't perform their jobs well. Yeah, anyway. What about those that were put on at home and overseas? What about shows that were put on at home and overseas by the British and US and Hollywood Cafe? That's an interesting subject for a series as well. Lots of, just because that goes into whole morale of of the military. You know, how were soldiers motivated? How were airmen motivated? How did you get into Lancaster and fly over Germany when you know your chances of coming back are low? How do you keep a nation galvanized, pushing in a direction? That's all things we can talk about. My favorite commanders of World War II, I like Francis Chuka, commander of 4th Indian Division, is a kind of favorite of mine. I think a lot of my favorite commanders are more at the kind of the battalion commander level. I think we talk too much about the generals. We talk a little bit less about, you know, people leading even companies. So Francis Chuka is one that springs to mind. Al Murray is a big fan of Francis Chuka. Some of the 6th Airborne commanders, Alastair Pearson, Brigadier James Hill, they I think were pretty fantastic. The American in command of Truscott, I think, was pretty good. There are people we don't talk about enough that deserve more praise. Keith Park, James, yes, I bow to your better knowledge on that. I'm not big on RAF leaders, and I kind of fall into a little bit about the kind of the Battle of Britain movie cliches. It's Trevor Howard, isn't it? Keith Park. So I'm not really good on RAF leaders. Why do you think Hess did what he did and that flight to the UK? Well, let's eliminate the fact it wasn't an imposter. It definitely was Hess. All the bullshit about it not being Hess, it was Hess. Occam's razor. Occam's razor, if you don't know, by the way, is the basic philosophical principle that the most likely explanation is usually correct. So, you know, if you live in the city and you hear your dustbins, trash cans banging at night, it might be an alien ship landing and a guy getting out who's landed badly, who's going to climb up your stairwell and try and come in your room and kidnap you and anally probe you. Might be that. More likely it's an urban fox. So it might have been an imposter. They might have found someone who looked like Hess. They might have put him in an aircraft over there. He might have willingly spent the next, whatever it was, 60 years in prison. More likely it was Hess. Now, what was he thinking? I have no idea. You know, I've no idea. Hess, mad as a box of badgers, wasn't it? I mean, I don't know. I've no idea who you know. There's lots of people that we are now trying to examine with modern understandings of states of mental health. So there's the big suggestion, which I think I'm on board with, that Montgomery is on the spectrum, for example. He's autistic on some level. But we're now, so people are, they're projecting. They say, well, Hess was maybe suffering from this, this, and this. Hitler was possibly this, this, or this. I think it's almost impossible to go back and say, yeah, this person was suffering by a thing we only gave a label decades later. So it's fun. It's a fun process to go back and look at what some of these leaders were on, and I mean were on possibly in terms of actually injection, or on in terms of how the hell do their brains function. And again, there's some real weird people involved in World War II, as there are weird people every day in our lives. There's some very, very odd people, and people with very odd behavior had positions of great responsibility in World War II, and some of them you can look at now and go, he's somewhere on the cuckoo, you know, fantastic discussions, but we can't go back and talk about that. I need a full episode on Woody's trash bins. Actually, mine's plastic. Actually, I made an analogy that the one that I get, I've had 3 or 4 emails, and one show I was talking about driving, getting in a tank, and it was, I think I was getting in a T-34. I was talking about the driver compartments being reduced, and I sat and I made a comment about, to get me out of the tank, they had to kind of liberally cover me in olive oil and slip me out naked. And I got emails saying, I can't get the picture of you covered in olive oil naked coming out of a T-34. And now you guys watching it have now going to have a takeaway of me naked being pulled out of a T-34 covered in olive oil. Yeah, no, sorry about that. For those of you who have to go to bed now, please don't have nightmares. Who are my favorite historians on World War? This is the last question, then I'll leave it. I mean, good grief. I mean, okay, let's answer this objectively. Okay, I don't think we should have favorite historians, in that if you like the work of one historian at the expense of others, even if that historian is really brilliant at what they do, it's always still going to be filtered through that historian's point of view. So back 20 years ago, when I was first guiding here in Normandy, every American who was on a tour had the bound set of Stephen Ambrose books, you know, the volume, yeah, the D-Day, Citizen Soldiers, the Victors and stuff, and they were like uber Stephen Ambrose fans. And by the way, I owe Stephen Ambrose, as everybody, a debt of thanks for popularizing history. He was the first person to make history books the kind of thing you'd buy in a supermarket, and you read it if you weren't interested in history. So we owe him a debt of thanks, but he went a bit problematic with his views and plagiarism and you name it, and accuracy, frankly. So, you know, yes, there's lots of authors I have multiple books from. He was a good writer, Stephen Ambrose, terrible historian, good writer. So I've got a lot of James Holland books. I've got a lot of Robert Lyman books. I've got a lot of John McManus. Who else have I got lots of books of by the same author? I can't try to think now. Pret Boutard, for example. But if you should read more authors, you know, so again, if you want to read about the Burma campaign, yes, start with Robert Lyman, start with James Holland, but also read books written at the time, written books by the war people who were there. Favorite authors are, if you have a favorite band or a favorite actor, that's fine. You know, I only watch Clint Eastwood films, someone might say, or yeah, I only ever watch Woody Allen, or I just listen to whatever it is, East Coast hip hop, whatever. John Partial. That's fine, because you're not trying to, you're not listening to music to learn. You're listening to music for entertainment, for enjoyment, for relaxation, for you know, whatever, films but history, yes, you're reading history for entertainment, but you're also reading history to learn. Surely, otherwise there's no point. If you're just reading for entertainment, stick with historical fiction. But if you're reading history because you are interested in it, you want to learn. So therefore, reading one author at the expense of someone else is giving you a one-track view of things. So yes, John Partial came up there. John Partial, Shattered Sword is a fantastic, probably the best book on Midway. But I'd also recommend reading Craig Simon's book on Midway. I'd also recommend Trent Hone about Midway for rounded. But Peter Caddick Adams, yeah, Ian, I've got a lot of his books as well. Mark Felton's just up in discussion now. So I'll start coming out in hives now. I don't want to say anything that could be potentially libelous, or that. I'm not a fan of Mark Felton. I think he's gone a bit into the clickbaity area of everything being sensational and fantastic, and this is the winning thing. This is the turning point. And I'm not a big fan. And I've always been asked, am I going to collaborate with him, or am I going to collaborate with Tick? And the answer is no. And the answer is no. I do not have any intention of collaborating with either of those people. They are plowing their furrow, and I am plowing my furrow. And because they are insanely popular, they have huge followings, and that's fine. And whatever, I'm doing what I'm doing. And David Glantz, yeah, I've got a few David Glantz books. They're big though, and I yeah. Why not Tick? God, why? Well, if you have to ask that question, I think, you know, it's about what I just said about objectivity, allowing people on with different views. He's starting to get, in my opinion, to give he's got an agenda. He's got views about things. And it's the problem with, okay, I'm a one-man channel. It is always me hosting, but it's the views of the historians. When it's a one historian channel and they are presenting the history, it becomes their version of the events, good or bad, or good and bad, depending on what they're talking about. But mine, by using however many I've used, 550 different historians, it all averages out. All the different views average out, because some of them are right-leaning, left-leaning, American, British, Australian, younger, older, academic historians, non-academic historians, hobby historians, reenactors, writers, journalists, political scientists, anthropologists. that range of views gives a range of ideas. So therefore, the average information being assimilated from World War II TV has therefore objectivity and balance. If it's one historian giving his version of things all the time, if you like Tick, that's great. And I agree. I agree his Stalingrad work is very good. I agree his military analysis is very good. I've got a big problem with anybody who says Hitler is a socialist. I'll leave it at that. And he did. Hitler was not a socialist. Hitler was a Nazi. He's a fascist. Anyone who's trying to claim him as a socialist has got a wrong idea of Hitler. And you can disagree with me. If you think Hitler was a socialist, and then I don't know what to say to you. I will still engage with you. Welcome to my channel. But he wasn't. And you can speak to hundreds and hundreds of historians who study the Holocaust, who will tell you that Hitler was a fascist, a Nazi, and you'll find the odd one, just like you'll find flat earthers, just like you'll find people who believe the Earth is the planet Earth is 4,000 years old, and you'll find people who have a alternate point of view. But Hitler was a Nazi, a fascist. He was not a socialist. That's it. I'm leaving on that. Rick Atkinson is another good story. So Tick. There's some great history there. Are we going with this? The use of the word socialism in the Nationals is not the way people. It's do some reading, right? And Hitler was a fascist. The Nazi Party were fascist. They do. I don't go down. We can't believe I'm going down this rabbit hole. They do embrace. No, not embrace. They do use a couple of tools of possibly socialist thinking to manipulate people to make them think something else, but they are not a socialist, or they are fascist. There we are. That's it. There, boom. I'm leaving it at that. Right, so folks, I'm going to go now because I'm going to go and do some stuff, do some shopping and stuff. Thank you for smoke. There's a good way of putting it. Socialism was a smokescreen. It's like any lots of nasty politicians will hide their true intent by galvanizing public opinion by something that they think they are, that people are out to take away our something. And what's that? That cartoon? There's a cartoon of a king on a castle rampart with his advisors, like medieval times, and outside all these angry mobs with pitchforks and spears, and the king is very worried, and the advisor says to the king, all you've got to do, your majesty, is convince the pitchfork people that the spear people want to take their pitchforks away. And that's a really good way of summing up how evil people or manipulative people convince the populace that there's another part of the populace that is out to get them. It's forged on division and creating splits, and which is where the whole persecution of the Jews and Slavs and minorities comes from. It's the uniting people under an idea that they are under threat from someone else, usually innocent. Usually the people with the least voice are the easiest to blame. So if you're in a community where all people are purple, and a green person comes there, blame all your ills on the green person. Everybody is tall, a short person comes in, blame all your ills on the short person. And that creates, and that's that. But God, my God, I can't believe I'm going into this a discussion about Hitler and what his politics were, because it's the last thing I want to do. Anyway, right. So I'm gonna go away. I just so you know, I have not heard anything from David Cameron, so I'm assuming there is an internet issue over there in Australia. So what I will do is I will reschedule that for some time, probably next week. So there you are. Thank you for paying. Not paying. Thank you for sitting in and listening to me. And for those of you who go to bed, I think some of you have finally gone to bed. When I started ranting, it's like, no, that's it. No, I'm off to bed. Woody's rambling. I'm off to bed there. Well, good. Sleep well. Those of you who have got to go to work, fine. I still can't believe this. It's currently, according to my figures, about 80 of you watching right now. It's crazy. I wouldn't watch me. Right, there we are then. Thank you, everybody. Please don't forget to consider becoming a patron or a channel member. I would really welcome your a few bucks a month, it would really help me out, and you'd hardly notice it going out. It's a cup of coffee. There you are. Cheers, everybody. I will see you all next time. It's Paul Woodadge, World War II TV. Next week we are talking about the RAF, and there'll be some great guests. So keep that schedule in your diary. See you, everybody. Bye.